What if Earth once hosted an advanced civilization long before humans ever appeared? Not ancient humans, not early ancestors, something far older, possibly intelligent, possibly even technological, and completely erased by time. Because the real mystery isn't just whether it existed, it's this: if it did exist, would we even be able to tell? Today, we're exploring a controversial question that sits between science and speculation. Could an advanced civilization have existed on Earth before humans and left almost no trace behind? And by the end, you might start questioning how much of Earth's past is still completely unknown. We usually think of civilizations falling because of war, disaster, or collapse. But what if the real destroyer isn't dramatic at all? What if it's simply time? Imagine a modern city left completely abandoned. In a few years, nature takes over. In a few hundred years, buildings begin to collapse. In a few thousand years, metal rusts away, roads crack, and forests reclaim everything. Now stretch that not for thousands, but for millions of years. At that scale, even stone doesn't stay the same. Even mountains change shape. Even entire landscapes are rewritten by erosion, tectonic movement, and geological pressure. So the question becomes unsettling. If something existed even 50 or 100 million years ago, would there be anything left that clearly says this was built? Or would everything be reduced to unrecognizable fragments buried deep beneath layers of earth? And if that's true, how confident can we really be about what didn't exist in the distant past? We often imagine Earth like a giant archive, quietly preserving the story of everything that ever lived here. But the reality might be very different. Earth is constantly active. Continents move. Oceans open and close. Volcanoes resurface entire regions. Old ground gets pushed deep into the crust and destroyed. New land is created, while ancient land disappears. So instead of preserving history, what if Earth is constantly rewriting it? If that's the case, then every few hundred million years, the planet essentially resets large portions of its surface. Not intentionally, but naturally, which means anything built on that surface would be subject to complete destruction over time. So even if a civilization reached incredible technological heights, could its evidence survive multiple geological cycles? Or would Earth simply recycle it into raw material, hiding it forever beneath newer layers of rock and life? We often assume intelligence is rare, fragile, and unique to our species. But what if intelligence is actually something that emerges more than once given enough time and the right conditions? Earth has existed for over 4.5 billion years. Humans, in comparison, have existed in our modern form for a tiny fraction of that time. That leaves an unimaginable gap where other forms of life could have evolved in completely different directions. So the question is, why assume we are the first? Is intelligence a one-time accident that only happened once in Earth's entire history? Or could it be a recurring outcome of evolution, appearing, growing, and disappearing, depending on environmental conditions? And if it did happen before, would we even recognize the remains of a species that wasn't biologically or culturally similar to us? Throughout history, there have been discoveries that didn't fit neatly into accepted timelines. Strange metal objects in ancient rock layers, unusual formations that resemble artificial shaping, geological anomalies that sparked debate before being explained, or sometimes just set aside. But here's the uncomfortable question: how many of these were dismissed simply because they didn't fit what we expect to find? Science is careful, and rightfully so, but interpretation is always influenced by expectation. If you don't believe something advanced existed in deep prehistory, you are more likely to interpret anything unusual as natural or accidental. So are these discoveries truly explained, or are we filtering them through assumptions about what should exist in Earth's timeline? And if even a few of them remain uncertain, what exactly are we overlooking? There's a thought experiment in science that flips everything on its head. It asks, if an industrial civilization existed millions of years ago, would we even be able to detect it today? The surprising answer is not no, but maybe not. Because over millions of years, Earth's surface doesn't preserve evidence the way we imagine. Industrial materials break down, chemical signatures get diluted, geological processes blur distinctions between natural and artificial. So the real question isn't whether such a civilization existed, but whether our methods of detection are even capable of seeing that far back clearly. And if they aren't, then what does that mean for everything we assume about deep time? We think of technology as permanent because we see how strong it is in our daily lives. Steel structures, concrete cities, satellites in orbit. But that permanence is only temporary on a geological scale. Give it enough time and everything breaks down. Metal oxidizes, concrete erodes, electronics decay into chemical dust. Even the most advanced machines eventually become indistinguishable from natural materials. Now extend that process over tens or hundreds of millions of years. Add pressure from shifting tectonic plates. Add heat from deep burial. Add chemical transformation over unimaginable time spans. At that point, would any machine still be recognizable as technology, or would it just become part of the Earth itself, completely erased as evidence? We rely heavily on fossils to reconstruct the past. Bones, imprints, mineralized remains. They form the backbone of everything we know about ancient life. But fossils are rare. They require specific conditions to form and survive. Most life leaves no trace at all. So if an intelligent species existed in environments that didn't favor fossilization, or if their physical structures were not easily preserved, would we ever know they existed? And even if fragments survived, would we recognize them as evidence of intelligence or just unusual natural formations? So the real question becomes, are we seeing the full story of life on Earth, or just the small portion that happened to survive by chance? Earth has experienced several mass extinction events where most life on the planet was wiped out. Entire ecosystems disappeared. Dominant species vanished. The planet reset itself biologically multiple times. Now imagine if, during one of those resets, something more than animals disappeared. What if an intelligent species existed before one of these extinction events and was completely erased along with everything else? If that happened, then even advanced civilizations wouldn't stand a chance against planetary scale resets. Everything they built would be gone, buried under new layers of life that started fresh afterward. So are extinctions just biological events, or are they full resets of Earth's history? We often ask whether we are the first intelligent civilization on Earth, but what if that's the wrong question? What if intelligence has appeared before, but never survived long enough to leave lasting evidence? In that case, we wouldn't be the first civilization. We would be the first one that managed to persist long enough to reach us. And that changes everything, because it means intelligence might not be rare, but survival might be. So the real mystery isn't whether we are first, but why we are still here when anything before might not have been. Maybe the truth isn't hidden because it's impossible to find, but because we don't know how to recognize it. If evidence of an ancient civilization existed in a form we didn't expect, scattered minerals, unusual isotopes, subtle geological patterns, would we even identify it as artificial, or would we explain it away as natural processes, simply because that's the only framework we currently have? And if that's true, then the biggest limitation isn't the past itself, it's us. So the final question isn't just whether a civilization existed before humans, it's whether we are capable of recognizing it if it did. So after all of this, we're left with more questions than answers. Did an advanced civilization exist before humans, or is Earth simply too old and too complex for that story to survive? Maybe the truth is simple. Maybe we are the first, or maybe we are just the first one we've managed to discover. But the deeper question remains the same. If something intelligent once stood here, looked at the sky, and asked the same questions we ask today, would anything of them still be here? Or would we walk right past it every single day without ever knowing?